I'm a doctor. I have to save patients' lives tomorrow. I'm supposed to be in New York, and I can't save my patients' lives because of you. No, you arrested a doctor for no reason. That I'm going to save lives, and now I can't save their lives tomorrow.
The story of this man, a doctor named Rogers, doesn't begin with this moment of desperate pleading from the back of a police car. It starts earlier that evening, amidst the sterile brightness and controlled chaos of the Tampa International Airport. Police were dispatched following reports of a disturbance at a JetBlue check-in counter. Upon arrival, they found Rogers, a middle-aged man in a sweatshirt, engaged in a heated dispute with airline staff. The initial problem was simple. He was being denied the right to check in for his flight. The reason, however, was more complicated. Rogers immediately launched into his defense, explaining that his wife had called ahead, worried because he had consumed 3 alcoholic beverages. He insisted vehemently that this was no cause for alarm. He wasn't driving a car, he was merely a passenger on a plane. In his view, having a few drinks was perfectly legal and should not prevent him from traveling. His frustration was palpable, his gestures growing larger and more animated as he tried to convey the injustice he felt. He even offered to take a drunk driving test on the spot, a proposal that held no relevance to airline policy but underscored his desperation to prove his sobriety and board his flight.
My wife is worried because she thinks I drank 3 drinks. I'm allowed to have 3 drinks, and they won't check me in because my wife said I'm drunk. I would literally do a drunk driving test.
He argued that he had an urgent need to be at his destination the next morning, making the airline's refusal completely unacceptable. The officer listened as Rogers's agitation grew. The man's actions began to contradict his words. He was becoming loud, his movements erratic, creating the very scene that justified the airline's caution. The officer attempted to de-escalate, advising him to back up and give everyone some space. But Rogers was too caught up in his own sense of righteous indignation. He couldn't understand why his explanation wasn't being accepted, why he was being treated, in his eyes, like a criminal for having done nothing wrong. The situation quickly devolved from a disagreement into a standoff. Rogers, trying to demonstrate his harmlessness, began making bizarre gestures, pointing at his own face and spreading his arms wide, as if to say there was no problem. He repeatedly demanded to be let on the plane, but the officer calmly explained that the decision was not his to make. It belonged to the airline staff. Rogers countered that the staff had never even seen him. They were acting solely on the basis of his wife's phone call. This sense of being judged unfairly fueled his growing anger. He began demanding that specific airline employees be brought to him, his voice rising in volume and intensity. The officer warned him that his behavior was only making the situation harder, but Rogers was beyond listening to reason. He was trapped in a loop of frustration, his actions actively preventing the outcome he so desperately wanted.
So tell me how I can be reasonable.
You have to relax.
I'm relaxed. You said it 5 times, and I'm relaxed. Am I not relaxed right now?
No.
I'm not relaxed right now. So right now, I'm not relaxed.
You're not.
I'm not.
No.
So right now, I'm not relaxed. How do you want me to be relaxed if I'm not relaxed right now?
The officer, maintaining a professional calm, tried a different approach. He attempted to explain the reality of the situation. The airline staff believed Rogers was intoxicated, and their policy, regardless of whether he passed a breathalyzer, gave them the right to refuse service to anyone they deemed unfit to fly. The officer pointed out that Rogers's current behavior, his refusal to listen and his confrontational tone, was the primary evidence they were using. Rogers, however, insisted he had been listening the whole time. The conversation became a circular argument about his state of mind. Then, the officer delivered a critical blow to Rogers's defense. He stated calmly that he could personally smell the alcohol on him. Rogers admitted to drinking, but argued it wasn't illegal. The officer agreed but pointed out that he must have done something to trigger the staff's reaction. This led to the most significant escalation. As Rogers continued to argue, gesturing aggressively, the officer instructed him to keep his hands down and out of his personal space. This directive was a clear warning that the officer's patience was wearing thin and that the encounter was crossing a line from a civil dispute to a potential law enforcement action. Rogers reacted with disbelief, questioning why he couldn't even move his own hands. The officer's response was swift and serious, warning Rogers that if he didn't comply, he was about to be put in handcuffs. For a moment, Rogers seemed to understand the gravity of the situation. He placed his hands behind his back, attempting to appear compliant while still verbally sparring with the officer.
Obviously, I did.
Keep your hand down. Keep your hand down.
Keep my hand up.
Keep your hand down,
I
all
can
right?
keep my hand
Because
up.
it's in my space.
I
all
can
right?
keep my hand
it's
up.
in my space.
I can keep it up.
I'm about to put cuffs on you.
Put the cuffs on. Listen, dude.
He continued to plead his case, framing himself as a calm, reasonable man who was being unfairly targeted. He insisted that his hands were behind his back and that nobody was uncomfortable, therefore there was no problem. But the officer made it clear that the time for negotiation was over. The airline had made its final decision. He would not be flying that night. The conversation then shifted from getting on the plane to the immediate consequences of Rogers's refusal to accept the situation. The officer suggested that Rogers should leave the airport property. This was no longer a request, but an official order. Rogers couldn't comprehend it. He argued that since the airline was the problem, he shouldn't have to leave the entire airport. The officer informed him that airport operations would be called, and if they determined he needed to leave, he would have no choice. This was the final turning point. Instead of complying, Rogers became fully defiant. He felt that he was being wronged and that the police were not helping him but were instead siding with the airline. He declared that he had done nothing wrong and challenged the officers, stating that if they were going to arrest him for simply trying to get on his flight, they should go ahead. He openly dared them to arrest him. His escalating behavior, culminating in this direct challenge, left the officers with no other option. They had given him every opportunity to de-escalate, to change his flight, to simply leave the premises, but he had refused at every turn.
Because
Eric,
you're saying I can't be on this flight for
If you do not get yourself together right now, I'm putting you in
I am
cuffs.
fine. You guys are the ones
You're gonna say that in like 20 seconds.
Arrest me. I'm not doing anything wrong. Arrest me. Ethan, go. Hurry up.
The officers moved in. As the handcuffs were placed on his wrists, Rogers's tone shifted from defiance to outrage. He began yelling that he was being arrested for no reason, that he hadn't done anything wrong. He called out for his wife, shouting her name as he was escorted out of the terminal. The reality of his situation had finally set in, but he still refused to accept any personal responsibility. He blamed everyone around him, yelling at a companion that he was being arrested because of them. He was led to a waiting police vehicle, still protesting his innocence, shouting for someone to come and tell the officers that he was blameless. The scene was chaotic, his voice echoing through the airport pickup area as he was firmly placed into the back of the squad car.
You didn't tell me to back up.
You told me.
You didn't tell me to back up.
You actually told us to leave.
Please.
You told me to leave when I told you you needed to leave.
Nothing wrong.
The little that I've seen.
Yeah. Talk to you.
Yes.
Once inside the vehicle, the doors closed, separating him from the world he was just fighting against. A profound sense of isolation and powerlessness took over, but his anger did not subside. It festered in the confined space of the back seat. He immediately began a relentless interrogation of the officers in the front, who remained largely silent. He demanded to know why he was arrested, what specific illegal act he had committed. He asked them to acknowledge him, to just confirm they could hear him, but his questions were met with a professional silence that only fueled his fury. He warned them that he would start screaming if they didn't answer him. he threatened to sue, claiming they had no reason for his arrest and were violating the law by not identifying themselves.
Can you please say yes, you hear me? Hey, passenger, can you please acknowledge me? Passenger, can you please say you hear me? Why are you arresting me? What did I do?
His rant grew more desperate and personal. He claimed their actions would now cause problems with his wife. He lamented missing his flight and insisted he had done nothing wrong. No violence, no foul language. The officer finally gave him a one-word answer for the charge: disorderly conduct. This only set Rogers off on a new tirade, demanding a legal definition and claiming he was being tortured by their silence. And it was here, in the back of the police car, that he played his final card. He revealed his profession, stating he was a doctor who was supposed to be in New York the next day to save patients' lives. He tried to shame the officers, telling them they would have to sleep at night knowing they had arrested a doctor for no reason, preventing him from treating patients with Parkinson's, Alzheimer's, and MS. He positioned himself as a martyr and the police as villains obstructing a noble cause. His monologue was a mix of self-pity, righteous anger, and a complete denial of the behavior that led to his arrest. Despite his eloquent and emotional pleas, the stark reality remained. He was charged with disorderly intoxication, his journey ending not in New York, but at the Orient Road Jail,